So I'm looking for a stable, a phone mount for my car that'll give me some stabilization. I think I got the audio dialed in pretty good. So if you have any recommendations, I'll take them, put them in the comments. And I'm sure I can just look on Amazon and figure it out. But anyway, also, this new channel. Well, it's not a new channel. I guess it is a new channel because I created a new Facebook page because they basically wouldn't let me link my personal Facebook page to this auto system I have of uploading. And I'm just trying to make it really streamlined and easy. So the Facebook page is T. Perry Bowers Creative Entrepreneur. So if you would, please go and follow that page if you're on Facebook. My Instagram and TikTok are both just me. Handle is T. Perry B. And then don't have an X profile. And then, this is on YouTube, which is my personal channel. So I'm basically taking everything off my Taylor Sound channel, and my Taylor Sound Facebook page, which according to chat, that's a really bad idea because I have a couple thousand followers on Facebook and I have a couple thousand subscribers on Taylor Sound. But this is a long-term game for me. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I want it clean, I want all my channels to be in sync with each other. So that's why I created the new Facebook page. My TikTok and my Instagram are my personal Instagram and TikTok. So I've basically sacrificed my personal Instagram for this. But I'm going to have, reason I want to talk about hunting today and bow hunting and what that's done for me. And Instagram has been the only place where I put any hunting content because there are people that are offended and triggered and sensitive to killing animals, and I understand that. I have no problem with whatever journey path you're on with your sensitivity to animals or what you think is best for human consciousness. So if you don't like hunting and you don't want to hear, maybe you want to hear my perspective on it, and that's what I'm going to give you today. What it's done for me, what it's meant for me, how I see it. Any of you who know me know that I love nature. I love animals. I mean, my dog's right here with me. I've showed you my dog a couple times. Maybe I'll talk about my dog sometime because that's a big part of my life. Kind of took over for my ex-wife now. My dog rides shotgun now. You know me as somebody who's kind and compassionate, hopefully, to people. I try to figure out what's best for the world, systems. My thoughts are always centered around what's best for the evolution of human consciousness. If I had a dream in this life, it would be that we all realize that we are all one, not only with human beings, but animals and nature. We have to coexist with each other. We have to coexist with nature and animals. And I think that's a very liberal mindset, although I don't consider myself a liberal or a conservative. I think that, again, maybe we'll talk about politics and my stance on that at some point. But I think liberalism has gotten to this place where, we don't have boundaries. They don't have boundaries, meaning the liberals, if you call yourself a liberal. And there's just kind of like this idea that you can't tell people no, and I don't think that's best for our human consciousness. I think people need boundaries. I think people need rules. I think people need guidelines and structure. And I'm not saying I'm a big supporter of law enforcement or taxation at the hand of a gun either. It's like I'm just in this place where I want people to raise their consciousness, and I have ideas about that. And one of the things that happened to me in the past, it's hard for me to say exactly, about 15 years ago, probably 10 to 15, somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago, a friend of mine, while we were having a monthly sweat lodge in the backyard of one of my other friends, after the sweat lodge, we were all sitting around talking, and my friend said, I'm going to start bow hunting deer. I got a compound bow. I'm shooting it. I think I might have a place where I can hunt, and if any of you guys are interested in joining me on that path, that journey, I'd be happy to take you along with me. And I had never, until that moment, I had never considered hunting at all that would be a part of my life. It never even occurred to me. But when he said that, it was like a fire, like a light bulb went off inside of me. I just said, yes, yeah, I want to do that. And so he had 40 acres down in Red Wing that he had access to. This woman said that we could come hunt on it, and there were plenty of deer down there. And I just watched my friend kind of get his bow and shoot it and learn about it. And I think within a couple years he shot a deer, and he recovered it, and we took it into his garage, and we had a Zoom call with somebody who had done some butchering before, and he showed us how to butcher it. And it was really uncomfortable for me at first to be around a carcass and flesh, and I kind of thought it was just, I had been conditioned to think that it was gross and disgusting, and it took me a couple years to get over that. But I knew that it was lighting something up inside of me, and I started to think about the cycle of life and what that meant to be that close to an animal and take its life and recover it and deal with the meat and then put it on my table and eat it. That was a whole cycle in and of itself that really intrigued me, really spoke to me, because it felt like I was making the connections that I had wanted to make for so long, meaning I was just separated from my food, where my food was coming from. In high school and college, I was a vegetarian for a long time, and I thought that was the next level of consciousness for me, to not ingest animals. I thought that animals were meant to have their own existence in the wild, and we were really meant to eat vegetables and fruits and nuts and berries, and that was the optimized diet. And at some point I began to eat meat again, and my body really responded to it immediately. It was like I had more energy, I just felt better, and I realized that at some point I needed to come to grips with the relationship that I had with living beings giving me light. And then of course it took me 20 years to realize that hunting was a complete ceremony in and of itself to bridge that gap. Because I was such a lover of animals, I honestly didn't know if I could take the life of a deer with my bow if I got a deer within range. So the first couple years I came out and hunted with my friends, and they had their bows and I had a staff. And one of the things that one of my elders told me was, maybe you can get so close to a deer you can reach out and touch it with your staff. And not that was really my goal. My goal was just to try to be in the woods and see deer. That was what I was just trying to do for the first couple of years. And then, if one of my friends got a deer, I would help them recover it and field dress it, skin it, butcher it, and, learn that process at the same time. And just to be in a group of men that were interested in hunting, start to feel what that is, and the camaraderie and the ancient DNA of men and hunting culture. So a couple years went by, and I decided that I was going to get a bow, and I bought a used bow from a guy off of Craigslist, and had a local shop here in St. Paul set it up for me, and I started shooting, and I took some lessons. I got to the place where I could shoot a paper plate at least at 20 yards pretty consistently, and so I took my bow out into the woods, and I had some setups on this 40 acres. I had one of my friends set a tree stand in one area, and then we built a platform in a crotch of a tree. I did some ground hunting. I just explored that piece of land to see if I could get close enough to a deer to shoot it. And it took me, first year I didn't even draw my bow back while I was in the woods, and the second year a deer came by, and I drew back my bow, and I released an arrow at that deer. I hit the deer. I wasn't knowledgeable about recovery time or how long you wait and what do you look for and all the things that I've learned since then, and I basically got down within about 15 minutes and started to track the deer, and there was blood on the ground, so I tracked the deer for 100 yards following blood, and I obviously didn't put a lethal hit on that deer, because looking back on it now, I more than likely bumped the deer, which means it was wounded, and it was either bedded down or in the woods still. And a lot of times if you shoot a deer and you don't put a double lung or a heart shot on it, say you get it in the guts or you get it in the liver or something like that, it takes a long time for the deer to die. But if you let the deer go off and lie down, it'll typically lie down and die. It might take somewhere between an hour to 36 hours really if you really put a bad shot on it. And I didn't know any of that, so I bumped the deer. I never recovered the deer. I searched all next day for the deer, that night and all the next day. I was disappointed and saddened about it, but in that moment I realized that I did have the desire to shoot a deer. I was really excited about it, and I had crossed that threshold, and now I knew that I really, really wanted to kill a deer and recover it. So I spent the next year hunting, and I think it was I honestly, that next year I think I might have shot at a couple deer, but I missed. But then the following year, it was like the third year that I had actually been in the woods with my bow. A doe came by this platform stand that I was in, and I got an arrow into her, and we looked for it that evening and couldn't find it. But then the next morning we found it. There was hardly any blood, but we did find it. It died maybe 100 yards from where I shot it, and covered the deer, skinned the deer, butchered the deer, and I was on cloud nine. I mean, that really turned something on in me, and it was still uncomfortable to field dress the deer. I mean, there was like a gag response that I had, and I wasn't used to flesh and insides and skin, and it was a little bit uncomfortable for me to even eat the deer afterwards, just because I had seen the whole process. But I knew that I was changing. I was facing the cycle of life more than most people do. And if you're a vegetarian, I respect your views and your journey on that. And there are consequences to agriculture, and if you really drill down on it, just growing a piece of a vegetable or a piece of fruit and eating it, there's a lot of death required by that, especially commercial agriculture. I mean, dig up those fields. I mean, you kill all kinds of animals, and the chemicals that we spray on our food, that's a whole different story. But bottom line is, if you eat and breathe, you are in the cycle of life, whether you want to admit it or not. Because I had responded so well to eating meat, I knew that I was a meat eater. My body needed that, but I needed to bridge that gap of facing that cycle and facing that relationship between a living being giving its life to me. I have kind of a ceremony that I do when I get out into the woods for the first time, in any different state that I go to, and I put some tobacco down, and I thank life and God and creation and the animal nations. And a lot of times I'll put some tobacco down. Most of the time when I have my tobacco with me, when I recover a deer, I'll put it down and I'll give some thanks. And I guess you could call that kind of like a Native American way to honor the life that has been given to you. I really I eat all the things that I kill, or else I give them to somebody else that I know is going to respect that kill and eat it and turn it into their life. I'm also, I love to kill big bucks. The antlers are important to me, and a lot of that's really misunderstood. I think there are some hunters. I know there are some hunters that kill deer and cape it and take the horns and leave the meat, and I find that reprehensible. Horns are important. They're a symbol of the kill and the hunt, and it's a way to honor the album or the animal. Put it on your wall and honor that being. But the meat is just as important, and to kill a deer and not use the meat is just, I'm not down with that. For me, it's a ceremony of the cycle of life. The person that introduced me to hunting was as concerned as I was about the learning that takes place in the process of hunting, especially bow hunting, because bow hunting is a much more intimate endeavor. You have to get much closer to the deer. You have to learn a real difficult skill of archery in order to do it. You have to practice. It's a skill that diminishes if you don't use it. That's why I try to shoot my bow as much as I can, even during the off season. I mean, I'm really passionate about the sport or the art of archery. We used to do a little bit more ritual and talking and sweat lodges and all that kind of stuff that went along with hunting. But at some point I realized that the act of bow hunting and hunting in general is a complete ceremony in and of itself. What I mean by that is, again, especially bow hunting, it takes concentration and focus and consistency shooting your bow all year round in order to be accurate and ethical as a bow hunter. And that year-round practice is a ceremony. And then, getting the proper equipment and setting the stands and scouting for the deer and learning about nature and woodsmanship is another part of the ceremony. And then the waiting, the patience is probably the most critical piece for any hunter to become friends with. It takes hours and hours and hours of waiting and seeing nothing before you get a chance at a deer. If you set a tree stand in a place where you think there are lots of deer, typically that means the deer go by once. They go by that spot once every 3 or 4 days if you see a lot of tracks. So once you set up, you could get lucky and see the deer go by on the first day, but you might have to wait 4 or 5 deer, and you have to understand the wind and where they're coming from, scent control and camouflage and silence and stillness. And these are spiritual practices, whether the hunter realizes it or not. These are things that take a lot of emotional and spiritual maturity to master. So you got the waiting, and then you have the moment, right? You have the deer approaching, you hear the deer, you get your bow ready, the deer comes within range, then you have to watch the deer, you have to get a nice broadside shot within range, 20 to 30 to 40 yards, to draw your bow without the deer spooking, you have to aim, and you have to execute the shot. Then there's the aftermath, and anyone will tell you who's been bow hunting for a long time, even if you practice and you're accurate in your backyard and you know exactly where to shoot a deer, many shots on deer are not good shots. Even the best archers in the world miss deer, put bad shots on deer, and there's a lot of, I guess, controversy. I think in England they don't even allow bow hunting because of the wounding statistics. They think it's cruel. They'd rather have you shoot a deer with a gun and have it have a quick death than wound a deer with an arrow. And here's how I think about that: is if you were a deer, what would you rather have? By what weapon would you rather be hunted? A gun or a bow? Because even though the potential is a lot higher for you to get wounded, for a deer to get wounded by an arrow, the potential for that arrow to actually be within range of the deer is a lot less, significantly less. So if you switched all weapons to guns, there would be a lot more deer killed. So I look at it as leveling the playing field. And I think if a deer could critically think, and you asked it, what would you rather have be hunted by, it would say, well, of course I'd want to be hunted by a bow and arrow because I have a better chance of survival. So that's my thinking on that. I've wounded deer, I've missed deer, I've put good shots on deer, which is probably one of the most satisfying things that I've ever done, is put a really good shot on a deer and see it die within 50 yards. And I'll just talk a little bit about the history of deer hunting, and especially horn hunting. Like, as I progressed in my hunting, I started out, I didn't even really think about an antlered deer. I didn't even really understand that there was a difference between a mature buck and a fawn. I was like, well, if there's a deer, that's a good harvest, and it is with a bow. Any deer you kill is a beautiful harvest and a hard thing to do. But after I killed a few does, I started to go down, hunting culture rabbit holes on social media and YouTube, and I realized that hunting and killing a mature buck was really the pinnacle of demonstrating your prowess as a hunter. And it kind of clicked in me that, again, it's you're pushing the goalposts back when you say I'm hunting for a mature antlered buck. When you start doing that, you have to start to pass deer. So now you've got deer, does, fawns, button bucks, smaller bucks in range multiple times, maybe 10 times, 100 times before you see a mature buck. So now you're even putting the ratio of kills down significantly. And the reason why it's the pinnacle is because mature bucks, if they're mature, are, I don't know if I want to use the word intelligent, because I don't know how much thinking an animal, a deer does, but I would say, the better way to say it for me would be their instincts have been sharpened over time, more and more and more. They're more sensitive to scent. I mean, you'll see a fawn doe come straight downwind of you and know that there's something wrong, but to still come into range. Whereas a mature buck will smell you or get a glimpse of you in the tree, and that you'll never see that buck again. They're just harder to kill. And that's why hunters put these big bucks on their walls, because it's a testament to their prowess of hunting. And you know that if someone has a mature buck on their wall, you know that they saw probably 100 deer and probably had 100 deer within range before they took that shot at that mature animal. So it really is quite an accomplishment, and to put something like that on your wall is really honor and respect for your patience, your commitment, your woodsman, your ability to understand deer and deer behavior, and your willingness to pass a lot of deer in order to harvest that mature animal. That's why those go on the wall, and that's why for 50,000 years, men, especially men, have used large antlered animals as a symbol of their ability to provide for the tribe. I guess you could say I had a little conflict of my soul when I started to realize that I wanted to kill a mature animal, a mature buck. I thought, well, now I'm just starting to become a typical, stereotypical hunter that just cares about antlers and the symbology and machismo and the bragging rights that come along with that. And while all that's somewhat true, again, it goes back to what I just said. It's a symbol of how good of a hunter you are. When I killed my first mature buck, it was because I started to understand where those bucks were traveling and when. It was in late October, and I had been on that property enough to where I had seen some mature bucks, and I had started to see where they were scouting bedding areas to find does in heat. And there was a line that was running basically all the way across the property. And at that point, I also was really starting to hunt the wind, and so I knew where this line was, and I found a tree where the wind was good most days. It was on a south wind, and I set up in that tree, and sure enough, a mature buck came by, and I shot it at 35 yards, and I recovered it. But that took me 4 or 5 years to figure out that pattern and to understand that deer. It took me hundreds of hours in the woods to cinch the deal on that. And I've killed a few other mature bucks now in my time, and it's all about understanding deer behavior, getting close enough to the deer where you can put a shot on them. It's all that. And so what I'll close with is what we realized was that hunting didn't need additional ceremony with it. Hunting is a ceremony, a fully encapsulated ceremony in and of itself. Now, the mindset is important to that, because there are certain times where, you want to create an energy of gratitude and respect around the animal. And it's honestly what I've found is even men who have been hunting all their life and have never been exposed to ceremony and all that do that. They have that ceremony built in, and they don't even realize it. There is a lot of gratitude. There is a lot of appreciation for nature and the hunt and the animal that you've harvested when you do kill a deer, any deer. I love that culture. I love bow hunting culture because of that. Because it takes an intimacy. It takes a ceremonial mindset to simply be willing to get that close to an animal, whether it's a mature buck or whatever you're trying to kill. And that's really, there is a bit of a distinction between rifle hunters and bow hunters. I found that bow hunters just have a little bit more depth a lot of times in terms of their appreciation and of course skill level. I haven't been around rifle hunters, but most of the bow hunters that I hunt with, they will not shoot a deer with a rifle. There are some hunters that will go from archery to rifle when the rifle season, to muzzle loader or shotgun. They'll they want to make it easier for themselves, and they don't have any issue taking an animal with whatever weapon they can use legally, and there's nothing wrong with that. But most of the bow hunters that I know, they'll hunt with a bow during rifle season or muzzleloader season or shotgun season. They don't switch weapons, because hunting with the bow is the thing, not killing the animal. It's the intimacy, it's the ceremony, it's the patience, the commitment. It's become a huge part of my life, and if any of y'all are interested in learning that, I'd be happy to give you some advice on where to start, and I'll probably do some introductions on archery equipment, and where to find a used bow, and or a bow that's a good bow that doesn't cost you too much money, and some camo and what you need to go out in your hunt and stuff like that. I'll be talking about that. And also, just lastly, this new platform and this new YouTube page and all of my platforms that you see me on, I'd really, really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe, especially to my YouTube channel. I should probably say this at the beginning, because the few of you who are still here, could you just please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like me, follow me on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and I'd really like to grow this. And again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to grow this channel and have my voice out there for people that are interested in hearing what I have to say. And again, I just want to say that I would really love to hear kind of how you're ingesting this, like if you're putting it on in the car and just listening to my voice, or putting it on in the background, or whether you're actually watching the whole thing. Because a lot of stuff that I listen to, I use it as a podcast, and I just listen to the voice because I like the way a person talks and I like their points of view. I'd really like to be that for some of you. I'd really like to be something that you could put on as you're driving to work, and it's kind of long form. This one's getting pretty long, but this is how long I'm just about to pull up to my studio, and I turned this on right when I left my house in Hudson, Wisconsin. So this is how long it takes me to get to my studio, about 45 minutes. I'm going to be just creating these things while I go to work. So I hope you enjoyed it, and please comment, subscribe, do all that. Give me some love. Rock on.